against Willy Falcon and Sal Magluta is one of the biggest in U.S. history. It's also one of the most interesting. The story involves $2 billion worth of cocaine, 2 champion powerboat racers, the president of Panama, and a magazine ad that has touched off an ethical debate at the highest levels of the legal community. In the mid-1980s, Willy Falcon and Sal Magluta, a couple of Miami high school dropouts, were living the lives of millionaire sportsmen. Their Seahawk team was challenging for a national championship on the offshore powerboat racing circuit.
Seahawk coming up
Seahawk
quickly,
on the inside is charging forward.
And while they were showing up on the sports pages and ESPN, no one noticed they were wanted in California for jumping bail on drug charges, and that the federal government suspected they were running one of the biggest drug rings on the East Coast.
These were your classic cocaine kingpins.
Steve Chaikin is a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida.
It's certainly one of the biggest cocaine operations that we have indicted here in the Southern District of Florida.
How much cocaine?
Estimated over 100 tons of cocaine were imported and distributed into this country by Falcon and Magluta and his organization.
Could you be in the drug business in South Florida without doing business with Sal and Willie?
Certainly you could not be in the drug business in the Southern District of Florida without knowing who they were.
A lot of people must have known who they were. According to prosecutors, Willie and Sal and their organization took in more than $2 billion over a 13-year period. They amassed a South Florida real estate empire that included condominiums, apartment buildings and houses, this headquarters ranch in western Dade County, and a farm just south of Lake Okeechobee with its own landing strip. Most of it, the government says, was in the name of offshore corporations, shell companies set up by Willie and Sal in places like Panama with the help of some very well-connected lawyers here in Panama City. So well-connected, in fact, that the lawyer who's listed as an officer and director on some of these corporation papers now lives right over there in the presidential palace. The president of Panama, Guillermo Endara, the man the United States helped bring to power after it invaded Panama to get rid of the drug-connected general, Manuel Noriega. Then in 1989, Willie and Sal's luck finally ran out. They were arrested as part of a federal government drug sweep and have been locked up awaiting trial ever since. And there our story might have ended if it weren't for the fact that a lot of Willie and Sal's friends and business associates who were expected to testify against them have had some bad luck of their own. They keep stepping in front of bullets. Juan Acosta, their Miami lawyer who helped them set up some of those offshore companies, was bumped off by a Colombian hitman just days before he was due to testify before a grand jury. Luis Escobedo, originally a co-defendant in the case, was gunned down outside a Coconut Grove nightclub after he turned state's evidence. Tattoo Cruz, another associate and would-be witness, took several bullets in the stomach. And Juan Barroso, Sal's one-time racing navigator, was shot and wounded. And that doesn't even include assorted firebombings, arsons, and threats against informants and their families. According to Willie and Sal's defense team, it's pure coincidence.
There is no evidence that our clients were involved in any violence relating to this case.
Defense lawyer Jeffrey Weiner, a former president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, is just one member of an all-star defense team assembled by Willie, Sal, and their co-defendants. It includes Roy Black, who represented William Kennedy Smith in his rape trial, Albert Krieger, John Gotti's lawyer, and Frank Rubino, whose most famous client is General Noriega. Only Weiner would talk with us, and then only after we showed up at his office with our cameras rolling. He says any suggestion that their clients are trying to silence testimony in the case is preposterous.
If the government felt that they could prove them guilty, they would indict them. They are not charged by any state government, by any local government, or by the federal government. So it is simply unfair to link violence that may have taken place or that did take place with known criminals, known convicted felons, known drug dealers, known violent people to this case when there's no evidence.
Maybe not. But last spring, after 2 murders and 3 attempted murders of potential witnesses in the case, Willie and Sal's lawyers took out an ad in a national publication. Information Wanted, it read, and listed the names of 31 people who were expected to testify against Willy and Sal. According to the government, the minute those names were published, the witnesses were in danger. Dick Gregory is a veteran prosecutor who specializes in drug cases. Some people have called it a hit list.
From my point of view as a prosecutor, and not one involved in this particular case, I have to tell you that this would have a chilling effect on any witness that I went to and saying, hey, I want you to come testify, and they're going to say to me, are you kidding? They're going to put my name on the prison list tomorrow morning, and I've got to be worried about getting a shiv in the ribs.
But the defense said it had an obligation to publish the list, to track down any information that might discredit Willy and Sal's accusers. And in this case, they say, many of them are government snitches, paid informants, or federal prisoners who have cut a deal to get a lighter sentence. And under federal court rules, the government doesn't have to supply the kind of information the defense says it needs. In fact, the government doesn't even have to give the defense team a complete list of witnesses. Weiner calls it trial by ambush and says the ad was the only response to the government's growing use of criminal informants.
Many have been involved in serious criminal conduct and will say anything, will commit perjury without batting an eye. We are entitled to know that information. The government isn't going to give it to us. It's bad enough they use murderers as witnesses, but not to disclose it, that's not fair.
What kind of information were you hoping to get by running this ad?
Number one, people who would say, yes, I know the third name on the list or the fifth name on the list. I remember he testified in Tucson in federal court, or he testified in Birmingham, Alabama in a state case. I remember he was paid $150,000 by the government. I have a transcript. Let me mail it to you. All of those things help us to prepare for trial.
But shortly after the ad first appeared in The Champion, a publication for defense attorneys, the first such ad the magazine has ever run, one of the people on the list, Bernie Gonzalez, at the time the lead witness in the case, was gunned down in his driveway. Is it commonplace for lawyers to take out ads for information on witnesses?
No, this is the first time I've ever seen an ad in this kind of publication with a list of government witnesses.
Why do you need to publish the list?
When we put an advertisement in the Champion seeking information, we're asking our 25,000 members and associate members around the country to please share information if you have it. What's wrong with that?
Well, you didn't just run the ad in The Champion.
Correct. It was reprinted in a Prison Life magazine.
Prison Life is just what it sounds like, a magazine for inmates. An ad in Prison Life is meant to be circulated in prisons, where many of the potential witnesses are being held.
Wanted information. It's a wanted poster. It's in Prison Life magazine. It's not in an investigative journal.
John Mattis is a Miami lawyer who represents 4 of the potential witnesses named in the ads. He says publishing the names of cooperating witnesses in prison makes them marked men.
It's a wanted poster circulated in the prison system where the witnesses are.
You're accusing them of intimidating witnesses?
I'm not accusing them. I'm saying that was the effect. The effect of putting an ad in Prison Life magazine is to cause people to suffer the consequences. What those consequences are, they might just be harassed. Their family might just receive midnight phone calls. Their family might just be shadowed by cars. They might just be stalked. That's all that might happen.
This ad walks a very fine line.
What line does it walk?
Well, it walks a very fine line between being a federal crime, obstruction of justice, and being a legitimate discovery technique.
Why would it be a federal crime?
Because under 18 United States Code Section 1512, if you intimidate or harass a witness, you are guilty of obstruction of justice.
All we said was we were seeking information about these people that we believe may be government witnesses at the trial.
You don't think it creates a climate of fear or intimidation?
It absolutely does not. What creates the climate of fear and intimidation around this nation is knowing that convicted murderers and drug dealers and other felons are routinely the government's darlings.
There is no case that you can make where you do not have an informant. Informants are absolutely essential. Our legal system requires first-hand testimony.
And according to Gregory, that kind of testimony usually doesn't come from choir boys.
Not model citizens. Hardly. But then again, swans don't swim in sewers. And if you're going to go down in the sewer to catch a drug dealer, you're going to have to use the kind of bird that swims around down there, not a swan.
Gregory says the defense lawyers didn't have to print the witnesses' names in a prison magazine to get the kind of information they were looking for. Lawyers routinely exchange information without going public, he says. In South Florida, defense lawyers publish what they call a rat patrol in their newsletter, seeking information on government witnesses.
These lawyers have a battery of private investigators that they use on a regular basis. I could name 6 or 7 for you who could go out and find background on each and every one of these witnesses without any help from the prison population.
If you were a federal prisoner, would you want it to be known among the prison population that you were cooperating in a major drug case, that you were a snitch?
Let's put it this way. They typically not only want it known, but they themselves make it known so that they can ensnare more people to become informants, and so that they will get more time off their sentence for bringing in people. You see, they get credit for everybody they bring in.
Make it sound like Amway.
Well, that's about what it is.
If I were a prisoner witness and I'm about to testify in a major federal case in which one witness has already been killed, that if I saw my name in a magazine being passed around the prison saying that I was a snitch about to testify, I'd be very concerned about my safety.
And in fact, in this case, the witnesses are. Those who are in jail have been isolated from other prisoners. And of the 30 potential witnesses on the list who are still alive, only one would agree to talk with us, and only then with his face in shadow and his voice disguised. He says his family has been harassed and he's been threatened.
You worry about your safety in
I
prison
do worry about my safety in prison.
due to the list.
Yes.
Explain that to me.
Any prison you go to, you're known as a government witness. And that means trouble for you.
What kind of trouble?
You could get killed.
Do you worry about that?
Yes, I do.
Did you ever stop to think that maybe somebody might get killed?
We were simply gathering information. If we, for 1 minute, as responsible lawyers practicing for many, many years, and ethical lawyers, felt that there would be harm to any witness from anything we did, we wouldn't do it.
Would you run this ad again?
Sure.
There have been an awful lot of people connected with this case
Right.
who have either been killed or wounded. Do you think it's a coincidence?
I don't think so.
Willy and Sal's lawyers aren't alone in defending their ads. Almost every legal ethics expert says they did nothing wrong. The way the system is set up, it's the job of the defense to discover whatever it can to discredit witnesses, and it's the job of the government to try and protect them.